Welcome back. In the last video, I showed you how to add objects into Element. In this video, I'm going to show you how to view and manage those objects within the Element Carousel. Let's open the portfolio that we created in the previous video. If I click on the Manage button and I click on Portfolio, I can find my first portfolio that I created. You will see the Element Carousel pop up. Now what I'll do is I'll take you through the key elements of the carousel. Firstly, at the top of the carousel, you'll see the carousel header. This tells you which carousel object you've opened up. These are the details that we recorded when we first added the object. You can see here the name, description, and the other fields that we initially created. It's worthy to note that in the details panel of the carousel, you can make some edits. For example, if I wanted to change the status of my portfolio, I can click on the status drop-down and choose a different status. If the portfolio or the object has a different link that I want to link it to, I can click on the link button and choose a new link. Once I've made my edits, I can then save them. Underneath the details panel, you'll notice the options panel. This panel contains all the views and objects that are related to a portfolio. You can expand or contract the options panel. You'll notice that there are objects that you can select or views that you can choose from to help you manage your portfolio. The next part of a portfolio carousel is the view panel. This panel here displays the object types that you've selected. For example, if I click on a dashboard within this portfolio, the panel will change to a dashboard. If I click on Children, the panel will then display the child projects that are contained within my portfolio. In the last video, I showed you how to add a project via the Add button. Here, I can show you how to add a project from within a portfolio quite easily. I have selected the Children function. To add a new one, I simply click on the plus button, and you'll notice that the new project form will open up from within the carousel. This is identical to the add form that we created from the Add button. So I'll go ahead and populate with some details. Now you'll notice when the portfolio link is displayed, it automatically is linking to my current portfolio. Once I have created my project, I can press Save. As you can see, I've got a notification that a new project has been created within my portfolio, and it is also displayed in my project view. So now I'll show you how to create some other objects. Let's look at creating a risk at the portfolio level. So if I look at my menu and I select the Risk and Issues button, you'll notice that it'll display any risks I've already got associated with this portfolio, but I can also create a new risk by clicking on the plus button. Now you'll see that the Add New Risk form has popped up. The advantage of creating a risk within the portfolio is that the risk is automatically associated to the portfolio I'm creating it in. You can see here the link has already been populated. Now I'll go through and populate the risk form. Now I can populate the owner field with who is going to manage the risk. In this case, I'll put my name in. And lastly, in the management plan, I can populate it with the plan that I'm going to take to mitigate the risk. Once I'm done creating my risk, I can press Save. The risk card is in my portfolio view panel in the risk section. Now, let's look at creating a funding allocation at portfolio level. To do that, I'll click on the Funding button in my Options menu. Now, to add a new funding allocation, I'll click on the Plus button. And as you can see, an Add form has popped up. I'll go through and populate the form. In the Forecast Value section, I'll populate it with how much money I'm forecasting to use in this fund. In the actual value, if I've already transacted against this funding allocation, I can populate the number in here. However, in this case, I've not transacted anything yet. The linked allocation is for linking this funding allocation to a higher level allocation. As I'm creating this funding allocation at my portfolio level, which is my highest level, I will not link it to anything. Depending on your company, there may be a couple of other fields that they'd want you to populate before you save. Once I'm done, I'll press save. Now you can see the funding card on my view panel in the carousel. It has the approved amount, the forecast amount, and how much I've actually spent. At this stage, it's 0. Now the last thing I want to create in my portfolio is a milestone. So I select the milestone button from the options menu. Currently, there are no milestones that I've created against this portfolio. I'll click on the plus button, and again you'll see a very familiar form now pop up. What I'll do is I'll go through and populate it with my milestone details. So let's talk about the forecast date. This is the date that I'll initially put in as when this milestone is due to be completed. As you can see, the parent field has already linked it to my portfolio. Once I'm happy with my milestone, I'll press save. Once again, you will see the milestone card pop up within the portfolio view panel. And here you will see what my forecast date was, how many days remaining, and also what the approved date was, which was my original forecast date. Now, let's drill down into a project view. So I'll select my children icon. All I'll need to do is select the project by clicking on it. As you can see, once I've selected my project, it's opened up a carousel for my project level. Now I'll show you how this works via the breadcrumb. If I wanted to go back a level, I can select my first portfolio. It's taken me back to the portfolio level. So let's go back down into the project again. And in here, you can see the interface is identical to the portfolio level carousel. Now let's create a task from within this project carousel. As you can see, I've already selected the task interface. Click on the plus button and I'll fill in my task details. Once again, you will notice that the task form is identical to the form that you can access via the add menu. I'll go ahead and I'll populate this form with a task. Now I can assign myself as a user against this task. And you can see that the parent project has already been populated as a link. So when I save this task, I'll get a notification. And there it is. And you can see here, when I adjusted my progress to 54%, it is also now showing me the detail in the corner of the task card. If I click on my task, you will see that the carousel has opened now at the task level. Again, it is very similar to the project level carousel and the portfolio level carousel. I have a breadcrumb that I can go back up the chain through my hierarchy. So in the options panel of the task view, you can see that I've got a limited number of objects and views that are related to tasks. It is interesting to note you can actually create tasks from within tasks. For example, in this task finish training module, I can go through and create subtasks. At the bottom here, you can see that my parent is actually the finish training module task, and it's automatically populated because I am within that task carousel. So when I save it, once again, I'll receive a notification. My subtask will be populated with the details I've recorded against it. And if I click into my subtask also has its own task carousel. I'm going to drill up to my project level and I want to create a project level funding allocation. I'll click on my breadcrumb to go back up to my project level. Here is the project level carousel. What I'll do is I'll click on the funding button in the options menu. And I'll click on the add new funding button. And as you can see, the add funding form at the project level is identical to the add funding form in any other level. I'll go through and populate it with some details. In the forecast value, I can enter the project level funding allocation forecast. I can click on the link button and find my portfolio level funding allocation. This funding allocation is now linked to my first funding allocation at the portfolio level. If I change the linked allocation type to a hard link, it will mean that my first funding allocation at the portfolio level will be made up of all the forecast values that I've created down here at the project level. If I leave it at soft, it means that the project level funding allocation will maintain a record between the project level and the portfolio level funding allocation, but the portfolio level funding allocation will remain as I originally forecasted. Now I'll save my project level funding allocation. I'll give you a quick overview on how funding allocations can be managed at the project level. If you look at the funding grid in the options menu, you'll see here that there is a cost breakdown by cost type. In later videos, I'll show you how to populate the funding grid so that you are able to manage your forecasts and your actual transactions. Now I'll drill back up to my portfolio level. And here we are back at the portfolio carousel. So today we've covered off how the carousel works, the 3 key sections of the carousel. We've also looked at how to set up projects, tasks, risks, funding allocations, and milestones. In the next video, we'll look at how you can view your work via the dashboard and the reporting functions. See you then.